Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you've been struggling with your disability, this is the episode for you. My brother John is going to be dropping some serious knowledge. Not only is he a veteran, not only is he a podcast host, but he's also an attorney. Now, everything we say, you can't hold us to everything, so that put that out right there. But John's going to be talking to us about some positive things today. And he's got an amazing podcast, a veteran-led podcast. I was just on it. You guys need to check it out. We'll talk about that later. But John, my brother, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. Memorial Day weekend is a great day to celebrate our fallen heroes and to reflect and then think about our future, right? There are so many of us who are here because someone else sacrificed, and we have to work every day to make it worth it. It kind of reminds me of something my daughter heard. She was at school, and they called it, the Free Stuff Sunday. She'd just gone back to school. And someone said to her friend, and they asked her, once again, I don't mean to get religious on here, but she said, are you a Christian? The girl said, yes. And she said, are you aware that Jesus died for your sins? And this girl said, yes. And every day I make sure it was worth his while. I think about that. We're going to screw up. We're going to make mistakes, but we should be going all in, and we should be making it worth the while for the people who sacrifice for us, especially those fellow service members. From all of us know somebody who made that sacrifice. And I always think about what my daughter told me about that conversation. I always think, we have an obligation to live our lives to the fullest because we're here. And every day we wake up, no matter what happened, no matter how bad the day before was, we get an opportunity, and we should consider ourselves fortunate to have that opportunity, no matter how bad it is.
Amen. And I'm a man of faith, so I absolutely love that. So first question out the gate, what is your definition of resiliency?
Never quit. You probably remember the cadence, right? The Ranger R, but all I remember was N is for never quit. N is for never quit. And we would say it like 3 times. I mean, look, I could probably recite the Ranger Creed right now, but I couldn't, I don't remember that full cadence. All I remember was N is for never quit. And we had to repeat that. Years ago, I was at an event with Tim Grover. He wrote a book called Relentless.
Yes.
He was Michael Jordan's trainer. And he said, when you get knocked down, it's not about popping straight back up, right? When you get knocked down, sometimes you take your time and get back up a different way. Stand up different. Stand up stronger. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And if I could, share a couple of examples, I had, you can probably see, I don't know if you see my neck, I had 3 discs replaced, and I've got, I have some nerve damage, but I still work out, but I have to work out different. I have lost some feeling and some muscles, some strength, and it sucks, but I still got to keep going, never quit. And so I exercise. I have to exercise different. I can't, lift the heavy weights. The workouts are not as intense, but you have to stand up different sometimes, and I recently went through a personal tragedy, second divorce. This one objectively was not my fault. First one, I mean, you can share the blame, but it was, it was a tragedy. It was a betrayal. It was gruesome. And I didn't see it coming. And this person, I had invested quite a bit in her professional career and her success. And, we had, when the betrayal happened, our twins were a little over 18 months old. And to have to deal with that, and to get knocked down. And there are days when I come into this organization, look, we've got over 170 team members. And I got to show up for the team, right? The team is depending on me. I can't just say, oh my God, I feel so betrayed. I feel so hurt. I feel so broken. I don't have that option. Now, as a leader, I can step aside and let other team members lead, but I got to bring the energy every single day because there are people who came to this organization who believe in our mission of supporting and defending our nation's heroes, the veterans. And so I can't let the clients down. I can't let my team down. I got to come in every single day. It doesn't matter what happened. And that's one thing I think it's really important that we learn as veterans. And I know that you learned as well, is that, those non-commissioned officers who lead by example show us that it doesn't matter what's going on in your personal life. The first sergeant says, always have your house in order. Guess what? Your house isn't always going to be in order. Bad things are going to happen. And you as a leader have to be resilient because people depend on you. They depend on you for their futures. And if you're a civilian running a company, they depend on you. If you're in the military, if you run a nonprofit, there are people who depend on you every single day for something. And that's a gift. Pressure is a privilege, right? Pressure bursts pipes, but it creates diamonds. But it's a privilege. And when we have the privilege of having the pressure of serving others, sometimes it makes those tragedies, sometimes it takes the sting out of them, because I don't have time to sit around, lay around, feel sorry for myself, feel bad about the betrayal, be upset. Yeah, I'm upset about it. Am I sad about it? Sure. Am I grieving properly? Probably not. But it's not about me. And thank God it's not. Thank God I have other people to live for, because that makes all the difference.
I love it, and I agree. And like Tim Grover said, I'm a big Tim Grover guy. If Kobe or Michael, if they won the championship, they were in the gym the next day. If they lost the championship, they were in the gym the next day. So it didn't matter whether they won or they lost. They still showed up. They put in the effort, and that's why they became Jordan and they became the Black Mamba, is because that mentality. And I think the veterans we're taught to have that Mamba mentality, correct?
Absolutely. And it's for never quit. And you can never quit. And I remember Jordan talking about, he would take that white towel after that loss, put it over his head for 11 minutes, soak it in. Then after that, it was all positive. We can't go back to the negative. And so I think it's important to learn the lessons, the after action review, learn from the negatives, but we have to stay positive and we have to do the work. And I love the stories about Kobe. The day that he was drafted, everybody else in the NBA was celebrating, getting drunk. He goes straight to the gym. He's like, oh, now it just started. And that's what success feels like. You win something big and you just realize all you won was an opportunity to become even better. And, that burden can be heavy sometimes, but the greats that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, they respected that weight and they wanted it. And I think we should cherish that burden. And in the military, we talk a lot about the burden of command, right? And it is a burden, but it's a burden we should all embrace because it gives our lives purpose. And that's what makes us even better, is when we have that purpose and we're doing it for somebody other than ourselves.
And I love that. And now, I'm a big basketball freak, so a lot of people don't realize Kobe got drafted by the Charlotte Hornets and got traded to the Lakers, and then he had to deal with Shaq. So he had a lot coming into the league at 17 years old, but he had that Mamba mentality at a young age. So if you don't know that story, definitely check out Tim Grover's book, Relentless. So give us a little background about where you come from, where did you grow up, and a little bit about your military career.
Sure. So my father's a Vietnam veteran. So to start off, my father defended the commander of the 5th Special Forces in Vietnam in a murder case. It was a nationally publicized case called the Green Beret Affair. And so that's where my dad was a famous attorney growing up, a great trial lawyer, tried cases. I think he had in 3 different countries. I think he had cases in 24 different states, but really a legend, but a horrible business person. And so growing up, he was gone a lot, but he was very supportive. I mean, I had a paper out since I was 10. I had no rules. I was never grounded. My parents, I remember I wanted this bike, Schwinn Predator. And my parents were like, well, yeah, just buy it. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, get it. You can detassel corn. You get a paper out. So I got a paper out. I bought that Schwinn Predator. And my parents never really had rules. They're just like, look, there are actions and there are consequences. That same year when I turned 10, I started playing midget football. And I had the uniform, it'd get all muddy, whatever. My mom's like, great, let me show you how to use a washing machine. So I learned how to wash my uniform. She's like, now you can wash all your clothes. And I have 2 brothers and a sister, and we're all between all of us, about 6 years apart total. And so a bunch of young kids running around, and my mom was working on getting her master's at the time. And so, the kids, I don't want to say we raised ourselves, but our parents were very, I think, forgiving, and we're not really into disciplining us as they were like, hey, we're going to give you responsibilities and you're going to learn. And so we were just expected to do the things that we would do. And keep in mind, they both came from Iowa and Nebraska. So farm families, you have kids for the purpose of having labor, right? We were just, we're the labor. And, but my parents really, I think it was a blessing because the lack of structure helped me, seek structure. And when I was 16, I went to New Mexico Military Institute. And I enjoyed the structure of a military school, but not so much that I was going to go to an academy. In fact, I was thinking about going to, I was played football. I thought I wanted to go to West Point, and they were recruiting me. I played fullback. They were recruiting me as a linebacker. And I realized I don't want to do any more military school. I ended up going to the College of William and Mary. I got to play with Mike Tomlin, who's now the Steelers head coach, and Sean McDermott, now the Bills head coach. Now, when I say play, I mean, I was on the bench for a couple of years. I got injured. And then I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I'm the oldest son. My dad's a lawyer, so I'm going to take over the family business, right? That in the Midwest, that's just how it is. But I wanted a break. So I decided to become an airborne ranger. So that's what I did. I became an infantry officer, got airborne qualified, ranger qualified. My first duty station was Fort Hood, Texas. Went to Bosnia in 99. We started bombing Kosovo. And there I was as a mechanized infantry platoon leader, having the time of my life. And we thought that was going to turn into a full-scale combat operations, but it never did. And so I came back summer of 2000. I got out and went to law school. I stayed in the National Guard. I got a company command while I was in law school. And then I took that company to Iraq in 2005, but went as a logistician instead of as an infantry officer. So I was still a company commander, but logistics company commander. Then I came back and I ended up doing over 20 years, including running the officer and warrant officer candidate school, which is probably the best job I had, training leaders. And I slowly took over my father's law firm during that time. So I was in the Guard. I was running the law firm. I was a practicing lawyer. I was working about 80 hours a week. I mean, I was just killing myself. I had a young daughter before I deployed. She was 4 months old. And I think, first marriage, lesson learned. When I came back, got so much into the business that I didn't pay a lot of attention to the family. I remember my first wife was like, "You weren't here for 18 months and now you're back and you're not here." And that was, that certainly, I think we stayed together for a while after that, but that was kind of like that was one of those first dominoes that falls in a marriage that, it's like, hey, it starts as a whole, but that was, that was tough. And I think I learned how to grind and work really hard. I was not good. I was not good at being a father and being at home and being around. Now, I got better at that, but the mentality was always, like Michael Jordan and Kobe, the most important thing is the thing. So for me, it was my clients, it was building the firm, it was my team members, my employees, the National Guard, all these things were so important to me that, family got it last. And, that was something that I could have done better. And, people say, well, do you regret it? And you certainly regret when relationships end or when you weren't there enough for your kids. But do I regret serving our clients? We got to serve veterans, our nation's heroes. No, because it was so fulfilling to help some of those veterans get the benefits that they earned. It was so fulfilling to develop those young officers that I did in the military and in the Guard and Reserves and on active duty. And it was, fulfilling to build the team that we have today. So, if I did it all, could I do it all over again? Could I do it differently? Yes. Would I do it differently? No.
Okay. So now if you would take us back to, you said you were on the bench. If you think back, did you see anything different in somebody like Tomlinson or the other coach? Did you see anything now do you think back? Did you see any leadership qualities back then?
They were both great leaders. They're both good guys and great leaders, well respected on the team. They were both heavily involved in like Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and they were always doing the extra things on the team. They were both, hard workers in the gym, but I wouldn't say there was anything really special about them other than they were talented and they were leaders by example. Other than that, they had some charisma, and they were like fierce competitors, but so was everybody else, right? So I would just say that they were probably the most consistent. And I think in leadership, consistency matters.
All right, so take us back, because I've had Navy SEALs on here, I've had Delta, I've had Green Berets, and I love asking this question. What made you make it through selection process and not quit? Like I had Mr. McCaskill, John McCaskill, come on, Frogman, and he said either I was going to die, but I was not going to quit. So what helped you get through selection process?
Sure. And then, so I went through the Army Ranger School and, as an infantry officer, you're expected to go. So it wasn't that hard to get in, but to get your tab was pretty difficult. And so, you know, I got out before I got the opportunity to go to a Ranger battalion, but I was a tabbed infantry officer. So I guess, you know, there's a debate whether you can call yourself a Ranger, but if you've earned the tab, you've earned the tab in my mind, because that's what I did. But, so I had, you know, my sophomore year playing football, I had a pretty bad injury and I was going to have to sit out for a year. And I talked to the doctor. He's like, look, I can't guarantee you'll ever play again, but I can guarantee you're going to sit out for a year. And, you know, back then they had the wireless they didn't have the wireless headset. So you had to carry the coach's cord during the games. I'm like, I'm not carrying the cord for a year. I'm out. So I quit. That was the first thing I ever quit in my life. And, the pain of quitting, you know, I knew what it felt like to quit. So the first time I went through Ranger School, I got to the mountain phase. I was droning. For the Rangers that have been, they know what droning is. It's when you're basically sleepwalking because you're deprived of sleep. You know, you're starving, you're deprived of sleep, and you're just patrolling. We're on the side of a mountain. I fell off the side. I was humping the pig, so I'm carrying the M60 machine gun. You know, carrying a ton and a bunch of extra ammo in the back. And I was a big Ranger. You know, I came in about 6'1", 220. Right? Because I was a former football player and I could, you know, bench press close to 400 pounds back then. I mean, I was big and I could run. And so I was a strong Ranger, not a smart Ranger. And so I was carrying a bunch of stuff. I was the pack mule and I was droning. I fell at the side of the mountain and I got up and I couldn't lift my left shoulder. And we had a special forces medic in our company. And he was, you know, a tabbed special forces guy that's going through Ranger School now. And he's like, hey, man, he's like, if you can't lift, he's like, look, if the medics see this, you're out. He's like, so, you know, I probably wouldn't say anything, but if you're like, your call, man. I'm like, well, I'm not going to quit. So then fortunately, the next rotation came through and said, Barry, you're platoon leader. And of course I screwed up my patrol. I got so frustrated about my arm and I failed my patrol. I went back, the medics checked me out. It took me 6 months to heal. And then I went back through Ranger School and graduated. So the good thing was I got to be a winter Ranger because I went through the November. I started the end of November. So December and January, got injured in January. Then I went back through Ranger School July, August. So when I graduated. So it was, you know, I got to experience both. It's a lot easier to be a summer Ranger than a winter Ranger. But I was also at Fort Benning for a year. So that probably is why. But, you know, I never even thought about quitting. And there was no question whether I was going to come back. I remember after I said was injured, failed out, and the branch manager was like, look, man, you can't go back for 6 months. Now, back then, medical records are paper, so I just took that shit out, you know. But he said, you can't go back. So for 6 months, so why don't we just send you to your unit? And I said, no, I'm going back to Ranger School. Like, there's not an option here. Like, and so I went back, yeah, I ended up, it was easier in this. The first time I went through, I didn't know what to expect. It's like you go to hell once. Yeah, it's not that bad. I'm not, you know, going back, it wasn't as bad. And also in the summer, because of the heat casualties and the guys from Fort Drum coming down there, I mean, the guys' brains were boiling and their Kevlar's 108-degree temperature. So they said, we need to, you know, whereas in the winter phase, they're worried about hypothermia. So they're just making you move constantly, push-ups, flutter kicks, whatever, moving through, you know, the swamps or the mountain phase. I mean, it was insane in the winter. But, and like I said, in the summer, they were more concerned about heat casualties. In winter, they were more concerned about hypothermia. And you got to remember, I went through the year, just 2 to 3 years after the 4 Rangers died in the swamp during KIT, killed in training, you know, from hypothermia. So I went through at a time when they were very sensitive to that. And so when I was going through mountain phase, when I got hurt and injured, there's the one phase before Florida, but we had crossed a wet stream, all this stuff. I mean, it was miserable. And in the summer, it was not that bad.
So now you spent time in the Guard, and a lot of people don't realize how when you're in, because I did time in the National Guard and active duty, that when you're in the Guard, you're not really military, you're not really full-time, and you're not really civilian. So you're pretty much playing a game of toss-up, and it's not easy on families. It's not easy on a soldier. Because people don't realize, it's 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. That's bullshit. You know, they get activated twice as much as they do as a regular soldier would to go to war. So what was that like being a citizen soldier?
Yeah, I mean, pre 9/11, it was not bad. So, you know, I got in right before 9/11. I was going to law school. And I remember showing up for my first drill. We went to the range. They're selling beer at the range. I mean, it's like a party, and everybody's laid back, and then 9/11 happens and everything changed. And all of a sudden, this is the Guard and Reserve became much more professional. I mean, I remember 99 in Bosnia, we're like, oh my God, the National Guard units, right? We make fun of those guys. And then when I went from active duty to Guard, it was just like that, for a year or two. And then September 11th happened and everything changed. And then, by the time, when I ran the Officer and Warrant Officer Candidate School, I had a guy who worked for me who runs a nuclear power plant, but as a National Guard company commander, he ran the best, he won some award for the best engineering company in the United States Army. I mean, he was, he's a reserve, a National Guard guy, a reservist. And once again, he had the civilian skills to run a nuclear power plant. So that probably tells you a little bit about his leadership abilities. But I mean, it was weird because when I was active duty Army in the 90s, I'd ask young, 18-year-old soldiers, why'd you join? They'd be like, hey, sir, it was either this or Burger King or Job Corps. When you don't have a high school diploma, there's not a lot of options. And then I go to the Guard and I got guys with PhD, and this is post 9/11, but I got guys with E4s with PhDs, right? Junior enlisted soldiers who just want to serve, who have, almost all of them had at least their bachelor's degrees. And so when I was in the Guard, I just saw it was a different type of soldier. The type of soldier, unfortunately, that sometimes would ask why, right, as opposed to just following the orders. But it was a different, it changed, and the level of professionalism changed. And I was there for that transformation. And yeah, you are absolutely right. Pre 9/11, it wasn't that tough. Post 9/11, I had 3 commands, 2 company commands and a battalion command, and a lot more is asked of you when you're a commander. And as you move through the ranks, there's a lot more opportunity, but also, a lot more is asked. There is that burden of command that you must take seriously. And I mean, I had some amazing soldiers come to me, some from active duty, some from doctoral programs, some just wanted to get their college paid for, but a lot of great, smart, young kids and older kids that enlisted because they wanted to serve their country. And that desire to serve, I think, was the same at the active as it was the reserve component, which was a lot different than pre 9/11 when I first experienced the Guard and Reserve.
Okay, so let's talk about, when a lot of friends went outside the wire, either seen a lot of shit or did a lot of shit, and they were afraid to say anything because they were, back then, 2003, 2004, they weren't as strict as now. They're talking about PTSD, TBIs, and stuff like that. Where if you got hurt back then, you didn't say anything. You're just like, you know what, rub some dirt on it, I'll be okay tomorrow. But now they're more cognizant about traumatic brain injuries, post-traumatic stress. So, have you seen that things are starting to make a change for the better? And what do you wish you would have known to tell your soldiers back then?
Yeah, I mean, back then, and look, this is why this is why we help veterans appeal VA disability claims. Because when I was in as an infantry soldier, hey, are you hurt or are you injured, right?
Yeah.
If you're hurt, rub some dirt on it and get back in there. Take a knee and drink water. If you're injured, we'll send you to sick call and you can be a little bitch. I don't know if I can say that, but whatever.
No, we're a military podcast. You can say
okay.
that.
So nobody wanted to go to sick call. And even if you did, what was it? Hey, take a couple Advil, drink water, right? That was it.
Take a Red Bull with a Motrin. You'll be okay.
And deployed, drink a Rip It, drink a Rip It, you'll be fine. So it was like, okay, if you're sick, you're a wimp and you're going to sick call and they're not going to help you. I mean, now I would say sometimes you go get an IV, and one time I got a couple IVs and felt as good, but hey, we had combat lifesavers. We could just stick ourselves. It wasn't a big deal. Right. So it's like, I could either stick myself or have somebody stick me or take Advil. That's better than what I'm going to get from the medics. Who cares? And so all these injuries that were not a big deal in service, or you didn't want to report, you get out and then you start getting old like me, and I'm 50, and it's like, they really start bothering you. And so we represent a lot of veterans. I mean, look, at the end, like when I got injured at Ranger School, I didn't want anybody to know because I didn't want to get kicked out. I didn't want to have to go through hell again. There are a lot of things that happen like that. You jump, right? You jump in Airborne School. Some friends here, you got to do those 5 jumps. Get your airborne wings. They didn't want anybody to know they got injured. And so they just suck it up. And so, things that stress fractures and small things that can get bigger because you don't treat them. So there are a lot of veterans that fail to report their injuries because they care about their careers. And mental health is even worse. Right now, people are worried they might lose their firearms, or, hey, if you say that you've got an issue, man, you might not get that promotion. They might not trust you. And look, some of the hard chargers out there that want to become sergeant major, they don't want anything bad in their file. So they know if they get treatment, that's going to look bad, right? This was the mentality back when I was in active duty. And so most people wouldn't do it. And I remember I had a staff sergeant come to me, and he's like, hey, and this was post 9/11. And this is after I'm the reserve component. He's one of my soldiers on active duty back when I was at Fort Hood. And he called me and said, hey, I can't sleep. I don't know what to do. I asked for some Ambien. Now they want me to do a PTSD diagnosis. I said, yeah, do it. Because when you get out, that you can get treatment. And I take this back. This is probably the most important lesson. And I knew it for a long time, but you don't know it till you know it. It's like someone can teach you the lesson, but if you're not ready to receive it, you will not receive it. And, my dad started helping veterans ever since he got back from Vietnam. But what happened was back then, lawyers did all the veterans work pro bono. Lawyers could not get paid unless they took the case to a federal court. So my dad did most of the regional office work came through from clients that he had that were like going through a divorce, going through a DUI, assault, even murder charges. My dad was a great lawyer, so some of them were not convicted. And a lot of it stemmed from we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder. Back then it was called shell shock. They didn't really understand, in the DSM, there wasn't a diagnosis for post-traumatic stress disorder, in the early 70s. And so my dad, would represent these veterans and help them get their VA claims, VA disability benefits. And, because as a pro bono service, because he was representing them on other legal matters. So it's just in course of this, let me help you. And there was a guy, we'll call him Tommy, who lived under a bridge. Well, my dad had represented somebody, helped him get his benefits. He says, you got to talk to Tommy. He was in Vietnam. I know he filed his claims like 10 years ago. Nothing's happened. Well, it turned out, Tommy had initially filed his claim like in 1972. The VA never adjudicated it. So decades went by. Eventually, Tommy is an alcoholic living under a bridge. And once again, I'm just giving a name in a major city. I'm not going to give you all the details, but because that's privileged, but because Tommy's story is not unique, right? So you get a homeless veteran living under a bridge in a major city, like, right? Pretty common. And he was a combat veteran in Vietnam. And my dad gets his case, says, wow, like the VA owes you a lot of money. Like, we're going to get this done. And so they go back, they get the case adjudicated finally, and they give him 10% back, like 20 years, right? So 20 years, 10%. And my dad appealed that, eventually got him 100% back to 20 years. Well, now Tommy, 100% disability, and now he's finally getting treatment for his PTSD, for his alcoholism. Tommy gets treatment, gets a job, gets married, has kids, and eventually starts a business and becomes a leader in the community. Now, the moral of the story is this. Tommy had that leadership ability that he learned in the military the entire time he was under the bridge and homeless. But he didn't have his benefits, he didn't have his treatment, and he didn't have anybody to help him. And so sometimes, as lawyers, we only get to support and defend the Constitution of the United States because people like you, Richard, took the oath, right? And so as lawyers, I took the oath. A lot of us took the oath, but now as lawyers, we do that one client at a time. And so we don't have to go overseas to support and defend the Constitution. Now we can do it from the comfort of our office, but it's still as impactful because we get to help veterans. Keep in mind, our Constitution talks about us taking care of our veterans. Our veterans have rights. And look, we're the less than 1% who actually did something for our country. And a lot of people want to go out and talk about, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm protesting this, and I'm going to sign a petition, I'm going to Facebook. Guess what? The veterans actually did something. And, as lawyers, I like to tell lawyers, like, get out there and figure out who you want to be a hero to. I want to be a hero to our veterans because they actually raised their hand and volunteered. And I couldn't practice law. None of us could if it were not for the brave men and women who support and defend the Constitution. That is the tool that we as lawyers use to help veterans and other individuals. Whether we're fighting an insurance company, fighting the government, it is all about, right, those initial that Bill of Rights, our basic constitutional rights. And now there are laws, and we are a nation of laws, not a nation of men. It does not matter who is in office. The law protects us all. We are all entitled to equal protection under the law. And so the great thing that we get to do, whether a veteran has been denied service connection for a disability, whether they received the wrong effective date, like Tommy, and they owed him decades of back pay, or they're underrated, which means, they might have a PTSD claim, but the VA just says, oh, well, here's your 10% for tinnitus. We'll see you later. Right. So we like to help veterans because we see the return, right? The return is this. Veterans have that. We all have that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If veterans don't have shelter, food, they can't take care of their families, it's difficult for them to become leaders in the community. But if they've been injured and they need help, whether it's, mental health treatment or something, because the physical manifestations of our wounds, right? Like my neck from too many jumps and the ranger school fall, if we can take care of that, they're already proven leaders. They volunteered. And I have not yet met a veteran who doesn't want to continue to serve their community after service. And I don't care whether it's someone who served for 2 years or someone who served for 30 years. There's that sense of duty that's there. And I think of like, the way you can be successful. I like what's his name? Jerry from J Dog, the trash room with J Dog Hauling. I mean, he's built this. Jerry Flanagan. Jerry is a great dude, and his name escaped me, but he's like, I think, my second guest on the podcast. But I've known Jerry for a long time. His wife is amazing. Teresa, right? Names escape me. I'm a little bit old, but they were so generous. And I talked to him, and he's been great about giving advice and just so giving of his time. And Jerry Flanagan says, he was an E4, right? And he starts this company. He's like, and we had that conversation. He's like, look, the basic building blocks were all there. And then I met with Daniel Alric, founder of Grunt Style. And he was very generous with me when I was trying to build our culture here at Berry Law. Right now, we're 170 team members. We've got veterans. We represent veterans in every single state. But when we were growing, I was having Daniel help me with the culture. And he said, yeah, come to San Antonio. And I met with him, and he was so nice. And I just said, how do you figure all this stuff out? He's like, I learned it all, before I even became a drill sergeant. He's like, I'm like, well, like if you have a HR issue, he's like, oh yeah, we use the Department of Army counseling form right here. He was using Army forms to run his company. But it was all very basic leadership skills. And look, leadership theory can get complicated. I know a lot of people with PhDs in leadership, but it's not about knowing what it's about. It's about the ability to execute. And people ask me a lot about, well, how do you determine a leader? I say, look, leaders get results. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anybody else. And so I've been very fortunate to get to know Jerry Flanagan, Daniel Alaric, and some of these veterans who built amazing organizations using those same skills. So when veterans would come to me and say, you know what, now that I'm getting my disability benefits, I'm getting treatment from the VA, I finally feel like I'm in a clear headspace. I feel like everything's under control. What do I do? And I'm like, go out and serve again. I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, go serve a nonprofit. If you work at a company, become a leader at that company, start your own company, but you are a leader. There is such a deficit of leaders. I'll tell you one more story. There's this group called CEO Circle through JP Morgan Chase and IVMF, which is Syracuse University Business School. And I was fortunate enough to be selected for that. And I met a guy from Chicago, and I was there, and he's like, hey, you got to meet my friend. He's the mayor there, has a director of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm like, for the city? Like, you see that at like the state level. He's like, yeah, for the city. So I meet this guy. He's like, look, less than 19% of the veterans in Chicago are getting any benefits. I was like, wow. And he's like, we need veterans not only to get their benefits here because it brings money to the economy, obviously, but it's like, there's more to it, that we need veterans who are getting treatment here, but we need leaders. He said, back when I was growing up, who were the leaders of the communities in Chicago? The churches. Do people go to church anymore? Not as much. And so who are those community leaders? And he's like, look, I want to develop these veterans into community leaders. And I know that some of them, because he's a veteran, he's like, once I got my benefits, once I got up to 100% or whatever the level was, where they had enough, their disabilities were being treated, they were getting medical treatment, they were being financially compensated, and they felt that they had stability in their lives. They wanted to do more. And that is I think the beauty of all of our veterans, that thing inside of you that made you want to enlist or become an officer when you were young, that's still in you. That, Yeah, that oath never expired, but that burning desire to serve, if you have it, it never goes away. Now, our ability to serve is sometimes hampered by our mental health conditions if we don't take care of ourselves. Sometimes, or we're not getting the right treatment. Sometimes physically, we're limited. But if we can just get in the right headspace, we already know what to do. And that's my job. So when veterans come to us and they've been denied by the VA, they got the wrong effective date, they should have received more back pay, or they're underrated, we want to get them justice because we want to help them. But more importantly, we want the veterans to continue to lead this country, right? And if you think about, some of the great companies that came, FedEx, right? Founded by Frederick Smith. Nike, Bill Bowerman, right? And people know all about Phil Knight, and he was a reservist, but Bill Bowerman, I believe he was a major. I think he was infantry here, and I think a Bronze Star or maybe a Silver Star and 2 Bronze Stars in World War II. So a lot of our great companies, hell, Warren Buffett served in the Nebraska National Guard. So I'm just telling you that a lot of our great companies, our greatest financial minds, were veterans, and people don't realize that until you start hiring veterans. And at Barry Law, we're over 30% veteran right now. And that's been our secret to success, right? It's a strategic decision to hire leaders who know how to grow leaders. That's it. And so we love to hire veterans. And, in our platform, the way it works is in representing veterans, we don't get paid unless the veteran wins. If we don't get a back pay award for the veteran, we don't get paid. And so, we make a guarantee. We put our money where our mouth is, which is we will do the work. We don't get paid unless we win. And I love that because so often, we people have businesses and services and it's like, well, what if your business was contingent on what you could deliver? And that's what I love, because winning is part of our culture. And look, this in combat, second place is death. In the courtroom, second place is you lost. So I like to steal from Hal Moore in We Were Soldiers Once and Young. We don't accept second place trophies at Barry Law. And the reason why we don't is because we understand why it's so important for our clients to win. When they say, help me with my VA claim, I'm going through bankruptcy, I'm going to be homeless, I just got divorced, and I know I need help. I don't have, and it's having the privilege to serve America's heroes when they're going through a hard time. Look, you're the comeback coach. You know what it means. I don't have to tell you.
So because there's a lot of companies out there, I'm not going to name any names, but a lot of them want $1,500, $3,000 up front for you to just help them with their claim. So what is the process with Barry Law?
Yeah, the difference with us, we are accredited through the VA. We are attorneys. So, there are other groups out there that are not accredited. They're not attorneys. And so for me, right, if I don't follow the rules, I can lose my license to practice law. I can lose my accreditation through the VA. So I am regulated, right? Like I have to follow rules. But I think there's some groups out there that they say, well, we're not accredited by the VA. We're not lawyers. We don't have to follow the rules because at this time, there's no criminal penalties. Now, there used to be criminal penalties up through 2007, 2008, when they actually promulgated the 2007 law that they said, okay, yeah, you know what? Like there's not going to be criminal penalties for this anymore. So, they're kind of working in the no man's land, which, hey, look, I'm a lawyer. I love loopholes. Like I'm not going to begrudge somebody for doing that, but the difference and it's their right to do it. And this is America. And, if so long as they're doing it and they're helping veterans, great. And because I believe that you should let the market dictate. And so I know that people are upset and they're like, well, people could go get it done for free by their service office. And there's so many great service organizations that will help file claims for free. That's not what we do. We don't handle, right? For us, at least at this point, we want the appeals. Your service organization, they can help you file the initial claim. Like I said, there's some of these companies that you talked about, they get paid up front. They can help you file the initial claim. What we do is we appeal. And so if the veteran has been denied after they filed the claim, those are the cases we want. Now, we do get a lot of veterans that come to us say, would you help us file the initial claim? And we do, but we don't get paid for that. That's, now it's interesting. The law is going to change. I don't know. There's the Guard Act, the Plus Act. We don't know how it's all going to turn out. And they're talking about, maybe we should allow people to charge for initial claims. I don't know. That's not where we are today. And you say, well, how would you deal with that then if all of the people who are supposedly your competitors are allowed to do that? And then that could change the industry. I don't know. But as it stands right now, our position is we don't get paid unless we win. And we believe that veterans can file their own claims, or they can work with the service organizations. There are a lot of great service organizations. Every county has a county veteran service officer who can help them file a claim. But we file claims pro bono. We don't charge for that. But then there's also a group out there that's getting paid to file claims. And what does that tell you? That there is a demand in the marketplace that veterans will pay for that. And so once again, I'm not here. And if they've got a profitable business from doing that, then, look, this is America. And I'm a capitalist. I respect that people want to help other people. And I believe if you can provide value and get paid, then I don't really have a problem with it, because if there is a need in the market that is not being met, well, this is why we're the United States of America. We believe in free enterprise. We believe in capitalism. We believe in giving people opportunities to serve others and to provide value. And we say that if they're not doing the right thing, the market, the consumer, will shut them down. And I think that's one of the great things about being an American, is that, we get the opportunity to do these things. Now, once again, I'm not, like I said, I don't really pass judgment on that, because we're in a different space. We're appealing the cases, that's where we want to be. But I think I've seen a lot of pushback and a lot of fighting, and I've seen both sides of the argument. And I know a lot of lawyers and people in my position would fight back again and say, well, the people shouldn't be allowed to charge to provide this service. But I have to think back to, I go back to my values and I say, what do I really believe? And yes, we want to help veterans, and I never want to see veterans victimized.
So what do you think are some of the reasons that claims get rejected? What are some of the big things that you see?
Yeah, right. So the same thing that happened in service. You have no record that this injury happened in service. Now you can get buddy statements, right, from people you served with. Look, it happens all the time. Somebody injures their back. A bunch of witnesses are there, guys you served with. They can write statements. They can submit affidavits saying, I was there when Richard, fell off the 5-ton truck and hurt his back. I was there. I saw it. And I took him to sick call. And then there's the loss of the medical records. We thought because records are now digitized, no, they still get lost, right? Yeah. And then there's the lack of a medical opinion. You can't just get service connected for a disability if you don't have a disability. So you have to show that you have a disability. Now, a lot of times, if you just request a medical exam through the VA, they will provide you a medical examination. And we get a lot of veterans who don't go to those medical examinations, right? Well, you got to go to the medical examination to get the proof that you have the disability. So it usually comes down to either the veteran did not have a diagnosis that shows that they have a current disability, or they can't prove that it happened in service because it's not in their service medical records. But once again, these are not insurmountable obstacles, right? We can hire doctors to get and have them review our records to say whether it's as likely as not that this disease or disability was caused by military service. And we can get evidence. I a lot of times I'll tell clients, raid the attic, bring back letters, stuff you have. We had a guy that served in Vietnam, 2 tours, and the VA told him you didn't serve in Vietnam. He called us crying, right? Because it's like, I can't believe they would do this to me. And for most veterans, it's about the dignity, right? And it's our promise, right? I think it was, our promise, the square deal, right? That we're going to give our veterans a square deal. We're going to take care of them. And, a government worth fighting for is a government worth holding accountable. And so, yes, you may need a medical examination. You may need to supplement those service records with affidavits or other proof that you were there in service. Sometimes our DD-214s are screwed up. It happens. That's why they have the DD-215 to fix the DD-214, right? So sometimes the medical records get screwed up. There are other issues. Sometimes you get a veteran, they call it a nexus, but there's no, you're in service and you have a disability, but we don't see the connection between the service and the disability. Okay. Then as lawyers, we need to bridge that gap. What evidence do they need? Let's help get that evidence. So, a lot of times it's just understanding it. It's like filing your taxes sometimes. It's like you generally know how to do it. I could file my own taxes, but I'm not an expert. And so I want to go somewhere, someone that maybe they can give me a bigger return. They can, because they're experts, right? And so I think sometimes you want to work with people who have the experience of handling it, who can see some of the patterns. But sometimes it's just a matter of, I'll tell you, the evidence is all there. It's all in the file. The VA just didn't review it. And look, some of these service medical records, you start going through them, and there's thousands of pages. And so it's easy to miss something, right? Or maybe it was called something else and they're not looking at the correct code under the correct diagnostic code, or, under the Code of Federal Regulations, every disease and disability is rated from 0 to 100%. And so they may have the wrong rating. It may be that the VA didn't give weight to an important medical opinion about the severity. And so someone who should be at 100% maybe only rated at 70%, right? And so these things happen frequently. And so our job is to go through it, the fine tooth comb, and figure out, okay, did the VA do what it was supposed to do? And if it didn't, then how do we ensure the veteran gets justice here? And sometimes it is very simple, where we don't even need new evidence. We can go into the record and point out exactly what the VA missed. And sometimes it's just putting that packet together saying, look, here's all the evidence. We're going to just staple it to the back of this thing. You can flip through it. Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, Exhibit 3. You're going to see all the records show that this veteran should be service connected for this disability at this percentage, effective back to this date in service, when they got out of service or when they filed the claim.
So then if we're veterans that are listening to this, how do we get in touch with the Barry Law Firm?
Yeah, so we are Barry Law, BERRYLAW. So you can go to barrylaw.com, BERRYLAW.com. Our local number, 402-466-8444. Our 800 number, 888-883-2483. I say again, 888-883-2483. I learned to repeat stuff, right? Calling some of the radio. I don't know if you remember those days, but I remember always repeating for clarity. But yeah, so like I said, it's Barry Law, barrylaw.com. We're on most social channels. We have another site, PTSD Lawyers, as in post-traumatic stress disorder. That's one where we keep a lot of our, I think a lot of great information is on ptsdlawyers.com. But yeah, that's how to find us. You can find me on Veteran Led on just about any social channel. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'll probably respond. I don't run the other social channels. People do that stuff for me. I don't pay a lot of attention to Facebook or Instagram or any of that. But I do have profiles and somebody does that stuff for me. But I am on LinkedIn, and I always like to help fellow veterans. And I love to hear from other leaders. You don't know how powerful your veteran network is. I think if I could tell veterans one thing, you don't know how powerful your veteran network is. If you got veterans looking for jobs, we love hiring veterans. Now we want the guys, not the E4s that shouldn't have made E4, or the O4s that should never have made O4, right? We want the superstars that got out of the military and want to continue to serve. We love doing that. We have a ton of positions, but we love to hire veterans. But I can tell you this, look, I was in Nashville last week, and we were supposed to go to the AC/DC concert. It was sold out. I was at a conference for something else. And one of my friends who's a veteran who lived in Nashville, he's like, hey, I heard, are you going? I was like, no, my whole team had to fly back. They couldn't, because it was whatever. Everybody got their tickets refunded. They got a box, this company that was going to sponsor it got a box. It was going to be great. No. So I'm the only one there. He's like, just go with me. He's like, I'll take you. I was going to take my daughter, but you know what? I'll take a fellow veteran. And I think, I've seen that happen so many times where, we want to help each other. And so, whether it's getting a veteran to a football game or to a, rock concert or whatever. And I have a friend, look, Ryan Hendrickson, he wrote a book called Tip of the Spear.
I've had him on the show.
Okay. Well, Ryan's got a gala in Texas, in Dallas. And he asked me, hey, would you absolutely let me support it? And I'm going to speak there. And then I just found out yesterday, hey, I'm not sure what's going on. We might need you to MC. Okay. I'm in. Like, how do I help? Right. And I think that's the beauty of, the veteran community is how do you help? And look, I didn't serve with Ryan. I met him through a friend and we have become great friends. Just simply, and that's the thing about the veteran community. It's one of us. There is unity here in this group. This is a very special fraternity that you're in. And I have not yet met a veteran who has ever turned me down or told me no. Now, sometimes they give me the soft Heisman and say, well, yeah, I can't really do that right now. But, I think we all want to solve each other's problems. I think we all want to help each other. So, look, if you're a veteran, you've been through some stuff, and we know it, and that's why we respect you, and that's why we respect each other.
I love it. So now, how do we find your podcast? Because I love it, and I was so grateful to be a guest on your podcast.
Yeah, and you were phenomenal. I love having the comeback coach on the Veteran-Led podcast. My team was really excited about that, and of course, I don't think it's gone live yet because I know they've been going through the editing and telling me how great it is. So they're pumped up about it. Trevor, it hasn't gone live yet, has it? 2 weeks, you're going live on the Veteran-Led podcast. But yeah, so Veteran-Led, look on any of your social channels, but we are on YouTube, Apple, whatever. Whatever all the channels. We're Veteran-Led is on all the channels. So whatever you're looking for, we're there. Just a Veteran-Led podcast, type it in, search it. And once again, for any veterans who want to reach out, be happy to provide you a copy of my book, Veteran-Led. This is the leadership manual that I use to build my company, to build my firm. And it's all basic stuff you already know. Oh, and it's an audiobook. It's an audiobook for the Marines that don't read. Yeah.
And I love it. And I'm so grateful. You said there's a copy coming on the way. I'm so appreciative. John, I want to thank your staff. Your staff is A-class, number one. Your audio people, every one of your staff is truly amazing. I want to give them a big shout out.
Well, thank you, Richard, and they are honored to have you on the show. I love the way you treat them with dignity and respect, and make them feel good about what they do, because they all love you. So whatever you're doing it right. And I know that's who you are and how you treat people. And of course, I've read your book, so I understand. Coming back from adversity, you never know what somebody else is going through, and you want to be kind and polite. And you have done that with my team. And I think, obviously that's who you are. And of course, vertical momentum, hey, I love it because it's an oxymoron. It's so keeping that momentum going up. Yeah. It's easy to keep momentum going down. It's so easy to spiral, to drink too much, to become negative, but to keep, vertical momentum is hard. So I'm going to ask you, I know we're way over time, but I want to ask you, what is vertical momentum?
Vertical momentum is just to keep going up. It doesn't matter if you fall, but as long as you keep going up, then you're going to hit the stars.
Awesome. Well,
I love you, John, brother. Have a great week. Thank you so much. And guys, as you know, I always end it this way. I'm a big fan of Joel Osteen, and something he always says is, every morning you wake up, you can be a victim or you can be a victor. And if you listen to this show, you're no longer a victim of your past. You're a victor of your present and your future. And thank you guys for always showing up. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Love each other and love one another. John, my brother, have an amazing week.
You too. Thank you so much, Richard.